Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is
Warren Realrider,
also known as the artist name.
The artist's name, TickSuck, and also under my own name, Warren Realrider. So, doing things under both.
Is there a intentional distinction with pieces that are done under TickSuck versus your name?
The TickSuck project was started as specifically noise, experimental, harsh noise, just that style of art under that name. I've had been doing visual art as myself, leading up to that, and kind of started doing sound things under my own name that didn't fit, weren't totally harsh noise or weren't from that side, maybe more low key experimental things, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll get into more of that, but I guess first of all, so we talked about noise and experiments. What is your primary passion?
My primary passion at the moment is my work. My work in the sound art realm, if you will, and performance and visual art. That's kind of been what I've kind of poured myself into the last 5 or 6 years. Mm-hmm. So slowly, kind of more and more, it seems like, and more things are coming along. Opportunities popping up, and so it's kept me focused in that world.
Yeah. I'm noticing the difference between saying music instead of, like you said, sound art. So why the distinction of sound art versus music?
I think my own personal approach, I'm not a trained musician and have very little of a background in that, other than basic things like, trying to learn guitar on my own, or, just maybe kind of jamming with friends that had instruments. And, I guess in a way, a lot of it was improvising. So not really coming from that background. And my background that I went to college for was in fine art. And I've always been an artist my whole life, as far as visual art, sculpture, drawing, painting, those kind of things. So I think when I started doing sound and more performance things, it just kind of to me, it was still an extension of my art practice. So, and I think being a fan of maybe different people that incorporated sound into their art, it's just kind of the place I put that in, or the tag I add to it.
Sure. Then let's get into art. How did you first get started in that? When did it first grab you?
I guess being a kid, my dad was an artist, and so it was always there around me growing up. At the time when I was, born up to, 5, and kind of coming into more just observing what was going on around me and being more observant of that. He was making T-shirts, doing a lot of I guess it would be commercial art, printing. He worked in a print shop. And beyond that, just the art that was around me in people's houses, a lot of Native American art, visually, growing up in that culture of dancing, different ceremonial things, songs. And so that was kind of the introduction of being around that. And I guess as a kid, probably cartoons and comic books and movies and that kind of thing was a big influence when I was a kid.
Yeah. Then how did that develop into a intentional practice of art?
Yeah. I think it was wanting to, as a kid, coming from that stuff, like wanting to, probably initially to be a comic book artist or copying things out of comic books, trying to learn to draw like that. My dad, he definitely pushed me to make art when I was little. Not hard, but he would make little projects for me, and I would try to do those paintings or copy paintings that, he would maybe draw out, and I would fill it in with color. So I think a lot of it became, and it's probably how a lot of artists start. You start copying something or something you like. You're trying to learn how to do that. So a lot of it was drawing, starting off, sketchbooks, just that type of thing. And just as I went along, I think the talent was apparent that I had, I guess, to be able to draw, to be able to copy things. And so I was always kind of pushed in that direction in different ways by different people, or encouraged. And when I probably wasn't a big thing until I got into like high school and was able to take art classes and just expand and try different things, and had maybe one really encouraging art teacher. So that's another thing when you hit that stride of somebody's there to like feed that and support you and try to push your art into other places.
Yeah. And then the decision to study it, for school and be like actually trained, whatever that means.
Yeah, to go to school. Yeah, so that was like the next step. When it comes time to, you're in high school and now you have to decide what you're going to do with your life. So
for whatever reason.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Yeah. So, and that was mine. I was like, I went back and forth between studying paleontology and painting. So when I got to school, I was like, I changed my major between those two things, I think twice, and then finally stuck with the art thing. I think it was always a place of discovery to kind of learn things about yourself. And I think it eventually became a way for me to connect back to my culture in a way. I think when I was a kid, I was always like looking outward of, I want to copy, like I said, comic books, things from movies, or even like album covers or whatever. Then eventually it turned into, looking back on culture. And like I said, it was kind of a discovery, a self-discovery of things that were always around me all the time.
Yeah.
And it kind of took that to maybe break loose of those things that were a bigger influence, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it. So
how would you describe your style?
I don't know if I never had like a specific style of art. I think if you could look at all the pieces I did throughout everything, I've always kind of tried different things, different sizes, different styles of painting. Sometimes more realistic, sometimes abstract. And same thing with the drawing or like sculpture, whatever it was. When I went to the University of Oklahoma and studied painting there. And I think at that point, just doing a lot of very symbols, whether they were maybe symbols from culture, from native culture, or they might be from the culture of the larger world or outside of that. And using those things as in compositions. So it was less, landscape or portrait. It was kind of more, kind of composing on a surface, I guess, with shapes and colors, things like that. Did do some installation art things, and then did do a few kind of sound art related things early on at that time when I was still in school. So I felt like school to me was a time to be very experimental, like, just try different things,
Mm-hmm.
So.
What's your favorite medium to work with? Is there one that you keep gravitating towards?
I think currently I don't even really do much visual art anymore. Other than if you want to call what the maybe performance aspect of what I do. But that's what I'm focused on, and what is really inspiring to me right now is like the sound thing, and using objects, maybe creating certain very basic instruments from materials, and extracting sounds from those, doing field recordings, and also sampling, digging into things to sample.
So then let's get into the what I would call music, but it depends who's asking. So how did you get into turning your art into sound art?
Yeah. Like I said, there were some early pieces I did I did a piece probably around 2000, which I've recently brought back a couple of times with it, that I used a turntable as a sound source. I've always been a huge music fan. Growing up, music was like a big part of that I guess I didn't talk about as much on the history side, but that was, I think, I had two older sisters that were, heavy into their music as teenagers. And I was a little kid, and then my parents were into what they were into. So I think growing up and hearing a lot of different styles of music, older brothers being into, punk rock and metal and that kind of stuff, led me down a lot of different paths of things to be into. So when it came time for me to buy my own music and look for my own music, I just kind of like expanded from there. So in the middle of doing artwork growing up, I was, learning about, weird metal music, or trying to, listening to Public Enemy, or all these different things that kind of influenced what I got into and what it became. Hip hop was a big part of that. Like I was talking about sampling, and that's not really part of the sounds I'm making, but maybe an influence indirectly with, collage and things like that. I think those early pieces, wanting to do things with sound, but not really knowing or having somebody to show me, how do you use mics or whatever. Yeah. It all seemed very far away from and what I could do. But I was like collecting things. I was making loops and had ideas, maybe to use different materials in installation pieces or sculptures. And the opportunity finally kind of came, and I was kind of finally, pushed in that direction in a way. My cousin, Nathan Young, we're about the same age, and we had actually gone to University of Oklahoma together. And we kind of grew up together, but not really that close. But when we got there, we met and, kind of realized we were into similar music tastes, but different at the same time. So we kind of really bonded over music, and both kind of very moving into being into very experimental things of all genres. So we had that connection, and then, we both graduated, moved on. I had a family, young family. So I went in that direction for a while. He went on and created his own art practice, and then actually did release some music. Moved out of state, and eventually ended up coming back to Oklahoma, moving back, and was in Tulsa. And he was part of the Tulsa Artist Fellowship there and was doing work. So he started bringing the work he was doing there, and started having experimental shows with people he knew that he could bring in. A lot of trying to bring in a local group of people doing experimental things. And so, when he got back, we kind of reconnected, and he immediately encouraged me to kind of like join into what was going on there. There was a sculpture show that I did a piece for early on. And then a little bit later that summer, this was 2016, they had a show, and he just kind of was like, hey, you should get something together. You should just, buy some equipment and do something, do, whatever you want. You can create whatever you want. And I had kind of seen what he was doing. Another person was Matt Hex. He's a noise artist that is based in Stillwell, Oklahoma, that they were really close. And so I'd kind of been watching what they were doing and seeing. And that was kind of one of my first close-up experiences with equipment that they had, and to see. But at the same time, I didn't really ask a lot of questions, and they didn't really tell me a lot. They were just like, go buy some gear and figure it out. So that was kind of cool to be able to do that, to be like, okay, I'm just going to, I'll figure this out. I'll look online and I'll, read everything I can. So it kind of became a research project in a way, to start researching how do you record, how do you
make sound?
Yeah, how do you make sound? How do you control it? And it's been a learning process, which that's kind of where I've been focused. We're talking about what am I focused on, or what is inspiring me is trying to learn to harness that and make it do what I want it to do, so that initial performance, whatever it wasn't that great, but it worked kind of what I wanted to do. And then it just rolled from there. Nathan had the space to put on shows with his projects he was doing. So, and which eventually turned into Tulsa Noise there. And that kind of just fed the whole thing. Shows kind of started happening more. He started bringing in people he wanted to have, or he could have come in to perform from other places, or maybe they were on tour. So I got put on a lot of those bills, and it just kind of like the momentum just kind of kept building over those next few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny how the transition sort of happens. It's like, I don't know. I noticed how you had mentioned that, well, like, I'm not really like a trained musician or whatever, but like you start getting booked on shows, and it's like you start being on stage often enough that it's like people are looking at you as a musician. And that is like, that's kind of for everyone, right? That it's like, oh, I don't know, like I like writing music and I play some songs and stuff. And then it's just like, oh yeah, like I want to be like you or something. And it's like, well, no, I'm just messing around. I don't know what I'm doing up here. Like nobody knows what they're doing up here.
Yeah. So yeah, first it was that way. Like I said, it became a process of like, okay, I had this first thing, but now I need to learn how to make something that takes the influences I had, and referencing those things, and learning how to maybe come up with my own style of composition. So it became a challenge to be like, well, what do I want to do? You know, how do I start to time things? How do I should start thinking about some type of structure. And I think that's something coming from like the noise field. It's pretty diverse in that way, where there are some people that their approach is like, this has no structure and this has no form or thought behind it even. You know, it's like some of the concepts are, there's no concept behind it other than just feedback and knob twisting or whatever it is. But you do see other people, and you're exposed to other people that are thinking about like, well, I'm trying to do this, or I have a concept of, you know, whatever it is. I think when you dig into that world, whether it's noise or it is experimental, composers, any of the experimental things, you know, there's a lot of different approaches to it. And I think you see those people that, and they may not be trained either, but they are thinking about things in a compositional way or a conceptual way. Mm-hmm. You know, it can be a mix or it can be divided out. But also I think coming to it from the art background, mm-hmm. The thing about it, when I would watch people that did experimental things or noise, was immediately I was like, I want to do something that's visually more interesting too, you know, maybe as kind of a performance as part of it, rather than just standing behind, you know, a desk, which, you know, it can be great to do that. But for me, I was like, I want to have like bring in materials or items or something that maybe pushes it more towards a visual art realm, you know?
And that is something that, you know, it's so interesting that music and audio and art, sound, or whatever it is that like you can consume it in a just audible way, but whenever you go to performances and experience it live, you are watching something happen. And so, yeah, having the visual background of like, there is something physically happening in front of you, and that is part of the art experience.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like I said, I think there was research going into it where I was like, okay, what does this person do? You know, the people I had seen or videos I could watch on YouTube of people performing. The things that, you know, always, I think catching your eye is one thing. The volume can be another thing. It can be over the top loud, and then the person can just stand there and do nothing, and it can still be great because it becomes a physical thing to also, you know. But I think just being influenced by people that kind of either brought in materials or brought in concepts or brought in their self to a performance, you know, threw themselves into it, was a big influence on what I was doing or what I ended up doing, where it's going. So
yeah. We've been talking very conceptually about all of these things. Let's get like, you know, very literal about these things. What do you use to make sounds, and what are these sounds that you're making?
Yeah, I think for the performances or even anything I do, I'm always like trying something new. So one of the main, I guess, like instrument items that early on was a thing that, and it's definitely a direct reference to like noise experimental things, was using contact microphones. Mm-hmm. And that was my first mission, was to find a contact microphone, which I did for the very first performance. And also on the first performance, the other direct reference to like noise, harsh noise, it's kind of like a thing in a lot of those, what a lot of people have done over time is to find a piece of metal to attach the contact microphone to. It's almost kind of cheesy, in a way, but it's still done. I mean, I still see people doing it all the time. But it's kind of like a signifier. It's kind of like if you're gonna play rock, you have you have to have a cool guitar. So it's like, maybe that's kind of the noise equivalent is you got to have a mangled piece of metal with a contact mic on it. So that's kind of been the main thing. So from there, the contact mic has kind of been used almost in everything I've done. Attaching it to cymbals, attaching it to, of course, like metal. I've attached it to wood. So a lot of those materials were things that maybe ideas from art pieces that I had like, this would be cool. Or I had come up with a piece but never did it. So I tried to bring in those elements to what I was doing. Started using very culturally, I guess, if you want to say, specific references. I've used several times these enamelware cooking items that are kind of widely used in like a lot of native maybe ceremonies or times of eating. Food might be served in those enamelware pots, and they're like maybe like a vintage thing. And I don't know really totally what era that comes from, but it's something that people will get to eat food on or serve food with. So using like kind of maybe very culturally specific references that maybe to someone that doesn't know, they might just be like, oh, he's just got like a metal pot that he has this contact mic attached to. But also, using a cymbal was something that kind of happened out of necessity, but at the same time being a very big fan of like drummers and always secretly wanting to be a drummer myself, but I never did. But so I was like, well, I'm going to use a cymbal in that piece. One of my pieces brought in turntables. There was always something I wanted to use. So I was like, well, when I get a chance, I'm going to, use a turntable. So kind of always searching for instruments. There's also the kind of boutique noise synth and, of course, all the other synths and drum machines and that type of stuff that people use. So, I've slowly collected different things to incorporate into that. But also eventually also working in field recordings, which was something that I was always into early on, recording with just a handheld tape recorder when I was younger. So that kind of became a thing where I'm like, okay, how do people make field recordings? Okay, I'm going to buy, whatever I can, and to do that and start incorporating those things or using them as elements. Yeah. So, yeah.
I want to intentionally discuss the Indigenous experience part of that, and especially in like the art world, and how, I mean, the art world itself is just already like an experience, and then sort of having the Indigenous side of that. So I mean, you've sort of made reference to like the ways in which you incorporate native things into your art, but I guess I'm trying to find a way of like asking the question in a way that like gets a interesting answer, but it's like how important, or like what are you trying to do with it? What is, all of the ways in which that can be phrased. Your Indigenous experience.
Yeah. I guess probably it comes from I think if you grow up in those communities, it's just part of the art you make. It's always going to be there. And it may be that you intentionally like choose it and that's what you really focus on, or it may be being pushed upon you to, oh, you need to paint more native subjects or whatever it is. But coming from that world, my dad was, like I said, he was an artist. He made T-shirts to sell at powwows with, funny graphics or powwow specific graphics or whatever. And but also coming from a tradition of painting and sculpture that he did, and then he actually made his living off of his artwork. He became a sculptor and working with clay and folks. He always focused on incorporating our background being Pawnee. Like he always put that in what he did. So I think that was a huge influence, and other people around me. I had an uncle that was a painter, and that's what he did. He made paintings that also, he was kind of a cowboy. He was a cowboy. So he incorporated that cowboy, subject matter, but also really focused on Pawnee subject matter. So I think growing up, that was always a thing that most people, no matter how they started or whatever, that always comes back. It can't be avoided of growing up within that culture. It's always there. It's always talked about. So I think for me, I always incorporated it in a lot of things I did, whether it was very straightforward or maybe very abstract. So when I started doing the sound things, like I said, I had a lot of ideas already kind of that I wanted to try and use. So in those early pieces, I was using all these loops I'd made of different powwow recordings and recordings from, some were specific to Pawnee, but reducing them down to a very abstract level where you may or may not get that that's what that is as a basic element. So I think using those things as a basis, as a jumping off point to reference bigger things, I would think it would be like modern existence, and maybe just asserting that as a way of sovereignty, as a way of like being like, well, this is who we are, and keeping certain ideas alive or moving forward, referencing, like I said, very culturally specific things. And eventually it turned into bringing back in language things as titles of pieces, or over the last year. I've always known some Pawnee language things, but never, and there have been language classes or people teaching it, and I've never really had the opportunity to do it until COVID, when they finally put the classes online. So we were doing Zoom. So I finally was able to take those classes and dive deeper into the language and start to really understand it from there were a couple of young linguists that are Pawnee that they started breaking language down into what the pieces of the language mean. And it starts to make more sense then, of like, instead of like somebody just telling you words that don't really, they've been removed from that context by, colonization, whatever you want to call those things, like boarding schools, whatever. And also English language replacing that language. So sometimes you hear words and you just know what it means, but you don't know it in a bigger context of a language. But kind of learning that and learning different words and trying to incorporate that into what I do is something I've tried to do too. So I kind of see it as like moving in the direction that probably a lot of people do as they're working through things, to try to be more Pawnee or whatever it is, whatever your background may be. But for me, that's what it was to do that. And then I guess moving on to the bringing in bigger ideas, like the pieces I have done with the rivers, or pieces I've done with like maps of like reflecting on the history of Oklahoma, the history of water, and the problems of society's impact on water, and that kind of world, the natural world, the negative impact on those spaces, and but also kind of reconnecting with those things. It's always been something I've been into, being around rivers, being in those spaces. So I've always done that. So it's kind of like through my practice, I just started bringing things like that into it too. Natural materials, different things, recordings from those places. So, yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely so much more to explore in all of these things. Yeah, but I have a list of questions. And so, but I guess last thing before I get to the deep questions that are specific to this podcast, what advice do you have for people that are wanting to do sound art like you do?
I would say just do some research. If you're wanting to do that, I feel like you're obviously have some knowledge of things that have been done with sound. But I would say, if you're trying to come from a very academic background, there's a lot of things to look at there, things to read, to research. If you're wanting to do just harsh noise with, some absurd subject matter, that there's a history there too. So, do the research and read about those people. And a lot of the equipment things can be figured out. And but I think also taking opportunities that come to you, that's always a big part of it, is finding a place to do it or people that want to support it. So sometimes you get lucky and it just happens, but sometimes you have to go out and find it, or make it happen. You have to just, no matter how lo-fi it is, it can be super lo-fi. That's the main thing, I think, is maybe people... I think that's something that I never realized for a long time, is like, well, I could just go do it through a boombox out on some street if I wanted to, and to not be... I think one thing is maybe just if you're going to perform or present what you do, is to let go of the fear of, what people are going to think too, is to just try to overcome that and not get caught up in worrying about that, if you truly want to do something and have a vision or an idea to put out.
Yeah. Getting into the deep questions that make bit depth, what is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
The role of that is something that it's like a daily thing, really. I think when I was younger, like I said, the Pawnee side has always been there in different ways. And I don't know that it was so much pushed on me, other than maybe, you just hear people talk about what those beliefs are, or beliefs in a creator, or beliefs in, or you hear stories about maybe elements of Pawnee religion, or if you want to call it that that may have been lost in the past, stories about what that was. But of course, growing up in Oklahoma and growing up in Pawnee, Oklahoma, I would say a lot of people there are, of some Christian background. So growing up, both grandparents were of those backgrounds of Baptist. And so that was always something that was around and you learned as a kid. So that was kind of like, I guess as a kid, my belief system in a way, but it was never something that I truly, I guess, believed in, or, I was always questioning that, but there was no other alternative really. But like I said, all the Pawnee things were around me, but I don't think as a kid I really got that that could still be a belief system. I think it was coming out of a time of people being very coming through the times where, maybe psychologically being very disheartened or rough times of like, what do we believe in? All these religious things have been lost. A lot of our beliefs have been lost. So, people turn to, Christianity and different forms of that to fill that void. So like I said, it was big. But one thing about it was my parents never they never pushed that on me. But they went to church at different times or, different things, but they never really pushed that. So to me, it kind of, that meant something because I was just like, well, other people are really pushing that, but they're not on me. And I was saying earlier, I think, through my art and looking, I think as I got in my, 20s, reflecting back on growing up and the stories I'd heard, but also, I felt like there was sort of, there's kind of been a long awakening of people in Pawnee, from Pawnee culture to really maybe meditate and focus back on those beliefs and what was still there, because there were things. I think that's the thing, is maybe it wasn't talked about or maybe it had been suppressed, but it did survive. So I kind of took that and through my art worked through some different subject matters that were very Pawnee. Maybe from stories, creation stories that still existed. And focusing back, for me, it was eventually to find the word that was the Pawnee word for the English translation. I guess people would say it was like, oh, this is, or they would say this is what Pawnees call God. Sure. But the word translated was the universe. Mm-hmm. So I took that word as like, well, this is where all that art was moving towards.
Real quick, what is the word?
Titawahat is the word, and that's like the rough English translation, I guess, would be the universe or everything. So that was what the supreme being or supreme, I don't even want to call it a being, but I think that concept was something that I really did a lot of self-focusing on, internal, like, what does that mean to me? So I think I just incorporated that concept into my life in a way, was that there is that everything, it's not like one specific place, whether huge or small, it's everywhere all at once. So that was kind of became my belief in that word. And but it's still ongoing, kind of listening to people, just trying to gather as much information, I guess. So that became kind of my spirituality, I guess. And at that point I had long, back in my teens, probably decided like, okay, I'm not like a Christian. I'm not Baptist. I don't believe in any of that stuff. So that had kind of left me, 5 or 6 years before that. Totally. I was just like, that's not where my beliefs lie at. So I think for a while I was kind of like lost in a way without like, looking for that, I guess, and finding it in, I think I found it through my art, through the painting and the things I discovered through that. Almost to a point where I think at some point when I kind of stopped painting, I felt like I had like turned a corner of like, okay, that helped me find this thing and brought me some peace, and I can, I don't know. I just didn't feel like I needed to paint anymore. So I did paint some, but it wasn't
like you didn't need to search for it anymore.
Yeah, the search was kind of over with. Yeah. So it was like doing other research and things. I mean, I was still connected to the art world and doing things here and there. Like I said, still like having ideas of pieces, but they were kind of more in the conceptual kind of maybe installation, site specific, maybe even land art things. So those ideas were still bouncing around. So yeah.
What is your definition of God? And I know that we just like talked about the difficulty of describing that, but I guess going into, especially since you had mentioned how even just like the fragments of language that like the deeper things that make up and how that word itself is like a thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely something that people kind of struggle with, that concept, or you come up with your own concept of what it is. I still think people, they may say they have a definite, but I feel like a lot of you're always kind of questioning that because it's never, I don't know. I guess if you're thinking it's some person sitting out there somewhere, but you don't see that person, but you form your own connection to it. So I don't know. My concept of that word is, I don't have a concept with that word, I guess. Like I said, the word, the Pawnee word for the universe, for everything, kind of became the concept that, where it wasn't like a person per se, it was more of like, it was the universe. It was everything. It was, like I said, to me, it became, not just universe in terms of like space or, that bigger thing, but it became, everything down to the smallest. I also come to this from like a nerdy science background. So it's like, it goes down to the atomic level too. The more things we discover, I feel like that science tries to discover, the more questions are there. And I think it's probably, if you want to talk about it as the universe, then it's like a connectedness to other people, to places. If you start to think about your connection through breathing to trees or plants, you have a connection there. Your connection to the water you drink that makes up your body and all those things, there's, if you start looking at all those connections, I mean, there's a lot of deep connections there that to me define that universe. And I think that's the thing with a lot of the different Pawnee stories, or even I'm also Crow, but learning some of those stories too, being connected to stars or things like that, like having a very close connection that, knowing that that's where we're at too. It's not like we're not in a system or close to a star, we're right there with it. And so all those things are really close to us, I feel like. So, like I said, the connections are deep and they go far.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What is free will?
Free will. I don't know. I guess free will would be something very internal with people. And obviously the other word with that would be the choosing or having a choice as to what you do. I think the word free will is, for me, it comes with a lot of responsibility because, you think about what you do and how it affects the things around you, the people around you, very immediately or very slowly. It's definitely something that I think maybe as you get older, that becomes more of a thing, for most people, maybe not everybody, but yeah, I think that's it. It's all about the choice and the ability to choose, the ability to think about consequences or to not think about consequences. Free will could be that, it could be doing things on an impulse or and not even really looking back at all, so yeah.
What do you think happens when we die?
I, I kind of thought about that question. I honestly don't know what happens. You can hear, and I feel like that's something with where I come from, with what Pawnee people say. You cross over to where your relatives have gone before you, but it's never specified as like, what is that? What is that place? Like I said, I truly don't know, but I think as far as like an afterlife kind of thing, to me, I having kids of my own, but also it doesn't have to be through children. It can be through the human family you're part of. Part of you does live on, through that. It's like but directly through kids, you are going to pass something on. If you want to look, that's how I look at it, is like, well, that's part of a, not that I'm living through them or anything, but, and to me, it's also something that it doesn't go just forward in an afterlife. It's a before life thing too. It's like, you have people that came before you, and, you're just in that timeline of that existence. So, I mean, if you want to look at it that way, it's like, yeah, there's something that you're also part of the past. You're also part of that, your ancestors, and you're part of a future thing, a future life. You're part of that. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be through children. It can be through your influence on somebody or the legacy you leave, whatever it is. The people that knew you, I feel like parts of you live on through that in a way. It's something, maybe like reverberations. So I don't know. I kind of don't know that when you die, that even if you believe you're going on to another place, that you would completely leave here right away anyways. You're still part of something bigger than yourself. Yeah,
absolutely. How do you determine what good behavior is?
I think that is something that you probably learned that from your parents, your ancestors. Probably those are the first things. The people you're close to, the people that raised you, they may not be your parents, they may be other people, but you learn from them what is good behavior. And yeah, maybe that might not be the right thing sometimes, but I think we all come from a place where your maybe community has certain beliefs or morals, and you learn from that what's right, what's wrong. And I feel like nowadays it's complicated by social media, news, and all of that stuff. It can be very still a lot of information, I guess, to try to be like what's good and what's bad. But I think that's the immediate thing is the people that raise you are going to kind of instill those things in you. And you may not even realize it until later what it is.
Yeah. How do we reduce the division between people?
I think through I think education is a huge part of that. People have to know where if you have two divided groups of people, I mean, there's obviously a reason why. But to know where those people are coming from, I think division probably comes a lot from, like I said, not having the knowledge, but having like a disinformation that's spread about people because somebody's like, or something is driving that division. But yeah, I think like education is the main thing, and learning about people's cultures, beliefs, backgrounds, to at least, make the divide less deep. I don't know if you can totally bridge some divides totally. You may bring things close or right up next to each other, but sometimes maybe people aren't going to ever get along. But it's a good goal to have. It's like how do you do that? How do you make people understand each other?
Yeah. Do you believe humans are evil by nature?
I don't believe people are evil by nature. That it's just or evil as like I don't believe in, I guess, evil as that kind of like Christian concept, yeah. Of that side of it. I think there's just a positive and negative in everybody. There's positive and negative ways of being, of acting, of treating, of how you react. I think it just is comes from your surroundings, how you were raised or not raised. Those things can. I think it can definitely feed negativity, and I don't know where the negativity. I think it just grows through different things. It's like I said, it's and what is negativity? I guess it kind of it can start like small things that really can't be seen as evil, but they snowball maybe into that one person that truly seems evil or does something that you could call that's an evil thing. But I don't think it's like predestined in a sense, but also at some point there's no turning back. I feel like for some bad things to happen, and unfortunately they do, but no, I don't think it's a given.
Yeah. What do you think humanity is heading towards in the future?
Oh, I hope a better place, but a lot of times it doesn't look like we're heading for a better place. I think in some ways, things, it kind of seems like through my lifetime, maybe an ebb and flow of like certain things getting better. And then, maybe something comes back in, or a bad way of thinking, or a bad type of government, or a bad type of leadership. There's a lot of like, I guess the power structures and resource resource needs and extractions define a lot of that. I just hope we can get to a place of a better balance to not destroy the earth, and not that we're going to destroy the earth; it'll destroy us. But of not reaching that point of like, well, we've destroyed our environment on Earth and everything, other things, environment too. I don't know where it's heading. I feel like, to me, it's kind of unknown because of how the current state of the world is. There's a lot of good people doing, fighting for good, that are standing up for different things. But there's a lot of work to do too. If you're fighting against corporations that really don't care about people, or preserving things, or sustainability. They're worried about is money and those type of things. So it's a big fight if you're going to try to fight back and try to make a balance of how do we exist. I think ultimately we'll hit a point where the current life we're used to will change in a big way. And, I just feel like that's always going to come along in the world. So it's like, what does it change to? Does it turn worse, or is it some big technological leap that makes things way better, and that we come up with some miracle technology that changes the way we exist here? Yeah, I don't know.
Or rediscover something that we already have.
Oh, yeah. It's always that.
What are you optimistic about for our future?
I think overall, I see, when I see the people being, learning more in an educational sense, and it can be in, higher academics, or it could be culturally. I feel like there's a lot you can do to learn about yourself. And now we're talking about bridging a divide, it's like, that makes me optimistic when I see those kind of things happening. But I think it's work that has to continue all the time. It's like, there's always something divisive out there, and people can be divided at any moment. So I think it's like something you have to find, something that sustains itself, but it has to be taught to the next generation, I feel like. And like I said, that's where education kind of comes in, as you teach them, like, look at this, there was this problem we fixed, and, this is how you keep fixing it. I think that's the thing, is sometimes people think, oh, we've reached this point of solving this issue. But you can get complacent, and then all of a sudden it's something like here in Oklahoma, where, now a law's been enacted all of a sudden, and it caught you off guard that things are reverting back to what you thought it was. We had passed that point of solving something, or bringing some type of equality for people. And now all of a sudden it's looks like it's turning back some other direction. So like I said, I think it's an ongoing thing. And I think the optimism is that I think there'll always be people that will fight for things that are right, or things that are fight injustices. There's always going to be somebody fighting that. And I think that's one of the things that makes me the most optimistic.
Yeah.
So,
what makes you content?
I think contentment kind of comes and goes. I wouldn't say that there's like an ultimate contentment, but oh man, yeah, I think right now one of the things that makes me very content is doing my work and being able to present that and have that sense of purpose of like, oh, I have this thing coming up, or I have this thing to complete. And you reach that contentment when the project's complete, or the performance is over, but then I also feel like it's immediately like it's over, and then you're on to something else. And so I think contentment is kind of like an everyday thing through little things, or big things that you're working on, or life things, goals, achievements. So you get that sense of contentment, but I also feel like the world's always moving, and there's always something that will mess with your contentment. So you always got to keep working to get to that place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When will you be satisfied?
I don't know that. Yeah, it's kind of the similar thing. Is like I don't know that I will ever truly be like satisfied, because I think I guess I'm try to be like a realist in that way, where I'm like, things are, you've always got to keep working at things. You've always got to keep learning things, and no matter where you're at and what you're doing, you shouldn't have that complacency that you're it all. That I'm done, or this is the ultimate thing. Yeah, I just feel like people should always like keep working, whether maybe you're done with that project, or maybe you don't want to play drums anymore. So you move on, but it's like, okay, what else is there to do now? I mean, there's always something to learn. There's always there's a lot of directions to go. So, yeah.
I have 2 more questions for you. Okay. What advice do you have for people in general?
I would say, to keep on moving, I'd say in a mental sense and a physical sense. It's something that you should always do, to maintain your health. It's something that I think when you're younger you don't think about those things, but some people do. But I feel like that's very important to whatever it is, if it's walking around the block or whatever, or, doing a marathon or whatever, but having something to keep you moving, because I think that feeds into just feeling better, mentally. I feel like it keeps you mentally fit too. But yeah, I think that's one thing, is just to keep on moving and maintain your health. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Lastly, potentially most importantly, cake or pie?
I'd have to go with pie, personally.
What's the pie that comes to mind whenever you...
My favorite pie that always comes to mind is pecan pie. So that's my go-to if I'm going to choose a pie.
Awesome. Warren, thank you so much for doing this with me.
All right, definitely. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Where can people find you and your things and check out?
I am on Instagram as Realrider TickSuck Sound. is what that is under. From Instagram, I do have a link tree. I can't think of what it is. It is under TickSuck. And that has videos, Bandcamp links, SoundCloud links, various other things. But definitely the Instagram is where I keep updated the most, sharing what's going on, or even just pictures or artwork, other things. But yeah, those are the main two places.
Sweet. Yeah, I was very excited for this, and I'm excited to continue this conversation. Anyways, yeah, thank you so much. I'm Santiago Ramones.
Warren Realrider.
What is there like a thing that you want to have play at the end of this? I don't know if you have like a SoundCloud recording or a Bandcamp thing that can go at the end of this.
Yeah, I guess I'll find something and let you know what it is. But yeah, I'll pick something out to play.
All right. You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music and produce audio. The music you're hearing now is music I made. You can listen to official releases by Santiago Ramones on Spotify, Apple Music, and the other streaming places. Or you can support me directly by buying my music on Bandcamp. I'm working on Hypothetical, my first singer-songwriter album, so if you'd like to hear that at some point, there are lots of ways to support me on my website. There's a Discord server in which we discuss deep topics from the podcast, but it's also a community of beautiful human beings. All the links to all my things are on my website, santiagoramones.com. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast. It would mean a lot to me to hear what you have to say, and it lets others know what to expect, better than I could ever explain. I want to help the world have deeper conversations, so thank you for listening to and supporting Bit Depth. I was in the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.